She walked into that boutique to buy a bag. 3 months of savings, 60 hours of overtime, 2 canceled dentist appointments because a missed shift meant a thinner fridge and another late fee email. She'd promised herself she'd buy one new thing, not because it was practical, not because it was on sale, but because she wanted it. Today was supposed to be small and selfish in a way that felt like oxygen. The door to Aurelia & Co. exhaled cool air when Elena Moore pushed it open. Inside, the light wasn't just bright, it was curated. It made gold warmer, marble colder, leather richer. Her shoes ticked across stone. Old brown leather, scuffed on the left toe, cleaned with a toothbrush that morning because she wasn't going to show up here with dirt on her. The smell hit her next. Fresh cut leather, a floral note like a whisper, and something else. Money or the absence of worry. The caramel bag sat under glass like a museum piece. Clean lines, no logo screaming, quiet wealth. $1,200. She'd looked at the price so many times online it felt like a hymn. She stood there with her hand on the edge of the case, breathing. "Can I help you?" the blonde asked. Her name tag said Haley in small gold letters. Her smile was precise, like a seam that would split if you tugged. "Yes," Elena said. "The Capella Reserve. I'd like to see it." Haley's gaze did a slow, deliberate pass. Hair tie, sleeves a shade too faded, belt a shade too practical, shoes that had known rain. "That's $1,200, she said, tone floating between information and warning. "I know." A brunette drifted over, perfume like a soft slap. "Cora." "Did you book a slot?" she asked brightly. "We only take out reserve for verified clients." "I didn't know I needed one to buy." "You don't," Haley said. "For most things." The smile warmed by 1 degree. "There's the Lumen line, very photogenic." She angled her head toward a cheaper display. "You'd love the way it looks online." "I'm not here to take photos," Elena said. A woman in pearls breezed in. Instantly, both clerks pivoted, voices going up half an octave, laughter appearing like stage lights. "Mrs. Cameron, the Paris drop landed at 9 a.m. Let me bring it out." They vanished, leaving Elena with her reflection and the bag. She adjusted her grip on her wallet. When the 2 clerks returned, the warmth had been used elsewhere. "So," Haley said, "you want to hold it?" "I want to buy it." Cora's smile sharpened. "We can let you handle it for a second." "Gloves? No?" "Okay." She unlocked the case, lifted the bag with her fingertips as if it were fragile or contagious, and placed it in Elena's hands. It was heavier than it looked. The leather was soft without being childish. It smelled like the first time she'd ever had something brand new that was hers. And for one unguarded heartbeat, Elena forgot her shoes, the lights, the eyes. She imagined the bag on the passenger seat. She imagined walking out of here without feeling like a thief of air. Then Cora plucked it back. "Oh, my bad. This one's tagged for a VIP." She put the bag on the counter and took out a cloth to polish away fingerprints that didn't need polishing. "We hate to disappoint, but policy." Elena blinked. "You knew that before you gave it to me." Cora's shrug was a dancer's. Pretty, useless. People like the experience. "I'm not here for an experience." Haley's laugh was soft and mean. "We sell dreams," she said. "Not to everyone," Cora murmured. Elena placed her card on the counter. "Run it." Haley didn't touch it. "Honey," she said, sympathetic in a way that made Elena want to retch. "It's not that kind of store." "What kind of store is it?" "The kind where we don't need to embarrass each other. The kind where you don't belong." The words weren't said, but they stood in the room like a third clerk. Elena pulled her wallet open. The clear sleeve flashed her sister's smile. Mia on a beach, hair whipped across her mouth, sun turning her skin to honey. Elena had promised on that hospital sheet she wouldn't shrink anymore. She wouldn't apologize for a dream. She put the cash on the counter anyway, 10s and 20s folded square. "Not enough? Fine. Take the card." Haley made a small sound like pity. "On purchases over 1,000, we only accept card from on-file clients. Compliance." "I'm a client if I buy something." "You're sweet," Cora said. "She meant you're poor. Look, don't take it personally. There's a clearance rack in back. Some of those are cute." She said cute like a downgrade you should thank her for. 2 other shoppers were watching now, the way people watch strangers slip on ice. Elena felt heat gather at her collarbones. I asked to buy a bag. You laughed at me. Nobody laughed, Haley said. You're laughing now. Ma'am, the manager called from the back without looking up. We are very busy. Elena closed her wallet with a click that sounded louder than it was. I'm sorry, she said automatically, and hated the words as they left. I'm sorry for wasting your time. She turned toward the door, 3 steps, marble under rubber. A small tremor passed through the glass, as something large pulled up to the curb outside. Elena's hand was on the handle when the door slid back. He stepped through like a question no one wanted the answer to. Dante Vale wore his suit like a fact. Charcoal, white shirt open 1 button, a watch on his wrist that measured time for men who could buy it. He had a face you couldn't place by age, only by consequence. People in the store stilled a fraction of a second before they realized they had. Power isn't volume, it's the silence it causes. Elena, he said, low enough for her alone, as if asking whether to raise or retreat. Her head moved a fraction. Don't. Not here. Not like this. Haley found her smile again. Mr. Vale, she said brightly, edges trembling. We were just... What did you say to my wife? Dante asked. No thunder, no teeth. A quiet that made everything else seem loud. Haley's throat worked. We were simply explaining store policy. Your store's policy, he said, is written by me. The manager appeared. He had the expression of a man who recognized both the owner and a storm. Mr. Vale, sir, so good to... Ownership, Dante said, palm open. The manager produced the binder like a rabbit from a hat. Dante flipped to the page he already knew, tapping with 2 fingers. Helios Retail, controlled by Vale Capital. He closed the binder. So it's simple. You work for me. He turned to Haley and Cora. You humiliated a customer. Cora's eyes were very blue and very frightened. We didn't... You did, Dante said. And you did it to the only customer I care about. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. You're done here. HR will arrange severance. Leave your badges. Haley laughed because that's what people do when they're falling. We didn't know she was your... So you treat everyone like garbage unless they're married to me? Dante asked, tilting his head as if studying a specimen. Apologize to her. They both turned. The apology came out skeletal. Elena felt nothing from it. Stop, she said to Dante, so quiet he almost missed it. His eyes cut to her. They don't get to make you feel small. You're making me feel smaller, she said. He absorbed the blow. It didn't show. Not here. Not now. Wrap the bag, he told the manager. Charge it. Elena shook her head once. He touched the counter with the black metal that passed for a card. Metal on glass, a sound like a door closing. They walked out under 100 eyes. In the car, Elena held the box on her lap like something she'd stolen. The city scrolled by, all glass and vertical hunger. I didn't need saving, she said. I didn't save you, Dante replied, eyes on the road. I corrected a mistake. You replaced one humiliation with another. Yours is louder. I can live with them fearing me, he said. I can't live with them disrespecting you. I don't need them to fear you, she said. I need them to see me. He didn't have a sentence for that. He had a skyline. He had a driver who didn't ask questions and a building that knew how to open its doors when he was near. He had a wife who put the box on the kitchen counter and walked to the window and pressed her palms against the glass, like it might be soft. He had the word sorry and didn't use it. He had another word, stay, and he didn't use that either. The next morning she was gone. The note was small and terrible because it was kind. I won't be a story about your power. I'll be a story about my work. She found the space in Brooklyn by following a rumor about a locksmith who also kept keys to old factories. It was a long room with brick walls and windows like tired eyes. Dust collected on the ridges where the sunlight fell. She swept it into piles that made her cough and smile. She bought 3 used sewing machines from a tailor going out of business. She bought a kettle that whistled. The first woman who came through the door was Maria, who had nimble fingers and a back that hurt on rainy days. The second was Yuki, who carried a sketchbook filled with dresses cut for bodies that weren't mannequins. The third was Nina, Elena's oldest friend, with a scar at her hairline and a new laugh that sounded like freedom learning how to walk. Later came Shanice, who wanted to prove something to a court date and to herself, and Patricia, who had 20 years of industrial sewing in her hands and no patience for sloppy seams. They didn't build an empire. They lined up pins. They straightened grain. They learned each other's coffee orders. They argued about hem lengths and then argued about music. They named it Velvet Line because the phrase made something soft rise in their throats. On the 7th day, a black sedan idled across the street too long. On the 14th, a man with perfect hair and no business being on their block wandered in and leafed through a rack and didn't buy anything. On the 21st, an envelope arrived with no return address and a check for $25,000 with a routing number that belonged to a bank that didn't exist anymore. Elena took the check to Dante without calling first. The elevator asked her to verify herself. The door opened anyway. "It's bait," he said, scanning the paper, flipping it, holding it to the light as if he would find poison there. "If you deposit it, federal flags hit your account. Then you're dirty on paper." "I'm not dirty," she said. "You're not," he said, "but they are writing a story where you are." "Who is they?" "Victor," he said, and the room chilled half a degree. "He thinks I'm going soft. He wants to prove it by wrecking what you're building. You could stop him." "I can stop a man," Dante said. "I can't stop a story he tells to a city that wants to believe it." He tried anyway. Meetings multiplied. Tony wanted bones broken. Dante wanted spreadsheets opened. He was changing the way his world worked, and that world didn't like it. Marcus, the only voice that never bent, watched him like a man watching a high-wire walker, hands in his pockets because there is nothing to catch a falling person with. The red paint came at dawn. Blood money, written in killer caps across Velvet Line's glass. The letters dripped with theatrical malice. Reporters appeared as if conjured by Malice's scent. Microphones banged the door. "Is it true your husband's shell companies hold this lease? Is this shop a laundering operation? How do you feel about exploiting disadvantaged women with illicit funds?" A customer filmed herself crying. Someone on the internet accused Elena of weaponizing pity for profit. By 5 p.m., Shanice had quit via text with an apology and a string of prayer hands. By 6, Yuki left a note on the cutting table. "I can't be on the news. I'm sorry." Maria stayed. Patricia stayed. Nina stayed and stood by the door like a thin bouncer. No one respected until they did. Elena didn't call Dante. She called the landlord and got no answer. She called a glass company and got an appointment for next week. She scrubbed at the red and turned pink, and then smeared, and then just looked like shame. When Dante arrived, she didn't stand. She didn't say, "I told you so." She let him stare at the letters. She let him feel what she had felt when he closed a room around her and made everyone quiet. "Let me fix it," he said. "You can't," she said. "Not with the tools you use." "What tools do you suggest?" She turned the laptop around. "Numbers," she said. "Documents. Paper cuts bleed slower, but they bleed you out." He looked. He listened to a language he didn't speak. Freight weights that didn't match. Bills of lading that lied politely. Shell companies with names like hymns to nothing. He saw something else too. The way Elena's fingers steadied when she was tracing a line to its end. The way she came alive when a pattern admitted it was a pattern. "You'll need his originals," he said finally. "I'll take them," she said. "You'll let me distract him." "No blood," she said. "Paper cuts," he said, almost smiling. Victor liked the Radmere because it pretended to be old money. He sat in a suite with a view of the park, ringed by men who had never walked in it. He smiled when Dante arrived. He smiled when Dante said the word surrender. He smiled like a man who had switched off the oxygen to a rival's building and could now watch windows go dark. "You're tired," Victor said, looking at Dante's face for the first time and seeing something softer and mistaking it for weakness. "We can work something out." Dante put a map of a kingdom on the table and pointed to the parts he would cede. Victor pretended to be magnanimous while choosing which parts to keep and which parts to poison later. At the same time, a woman in a gray janitor's uniform pushed a cart down a service hallway that smelled like lemon-scented lies. The badge clipped to her shirt said, Jenny Martinez. Her hands shook once when she passed a camera. She adjusted her glasses in the reflection of a stainless steel door and reminded herself to breathe like no one is watching when everyone is. The safe was behind a painting because men like Victor think expensive art is a wall. The device Elena pressed to the lock looked like something that could be bought online if you knew which words not to type. The minutes stretched long and thin. In the suite down the hall, Dante sipped water like it was something he was allowed. The lock gave a tiny cough. The door eased. The contents looked like a dare. Leather book with embossed initials, flash drives that might as well have been loaded guns, envelopes with seals that had lost their authority by being here. Elena photographed the pages in order, then again out of order. She shot the envelopes and the seals and the signatures. She shot the flash drives with a timestamp. Her phone vibrated in her hand, a ping from the encrypted cloud Dante's people had built, and she didn't want to know how. Upload complete. Upload complete. Upload. What are you doing? The voice was a door slamming. A man filled the frame. Security chief, shoulders a half-yard wide, suspicion cut into his face like weather. Elena blinked, turned, covered the safe with her body like a woman protecting her own bag. Cleaning, she said. Badge up. I was told. You weren't scheduled on this floor. I'm new, she said, taking one careful step back from the painting and the truth behind it. They said executive suite, 242, early sweep. I can go do the hallway first, if that's better. His eyes slid to the cart, to the spray bottle, to the scuffed non-slip shoes worn down at the edges, to the way she held her shoulders, too square for a cleaner, too ready for a lie. She forced her hands to shake the way they had wanted to. He made a small face, like a man deciding a small mystery wasn't worth his dinner being late. Do the hallway, he said. Next time, wait for clearance. Yes, sir, she said, as if he'd reminded her to clock out. In the suite, Victor opened his palm as if to hold everything and nothing. Bridge your ports to me, he said. You keep your pretty wife away from addresses the press can find. We both get what we want. Dante looked at Victor for a long time, like a man reading a reflection in a window at night, his own face superimposed on a city. He smiled very slightly and let Victor think it meant yes. Elena pushed the cart into the service elevator and let the doors close like a mercy. She didn't let her breath go until she was alone in metal, watching her face float in stainless steel. She thought about Mia, that last night, in and out of the morphine tide, whispering, "Promise me you won't apologize for wanting." She looked down at the phone. Upload complete. Upload complete. The screen glowed like a tiny square of morning. Dante left the Radmir with no deal on paper and the impression of a deal in the air, which is the same thing to men like Victor until it isn't. He got into the car. He texted one word. Go. Marcus pressed a sequence on a keyboard in a place with no name. Copies of things Elena had photographed went to places that didn't like each other but agreed on hating fraud. A federal inbox. A state office interested in taxes when the violence wouldn't stick. A journalist whose ethics were a little too proud and whose appetite was a little too large. The first call Victor took after Dante left was from a number he recognized only because he had paid for it not to be monitored. The voice told him nothing useful and everything necessary. We may have a problem. He looked at his safe, which appeared closed and full. He looked at a painting which would always look the same. He told himself a story where Dante crawled back and kissed the ring. He didn't believe it, but he liked the shape of it on his tongue. Elena wheeled the cart through a kitchen, nodded at a chef who did not see her, waited in a corridor while a busboy pushed a rack of glasses through, stepped into freight and counted the floor numbers like a mantra. In her pocket, the phone buzzed once more with a notification she wouldn't see until later, an automated acknowledgement from an address that never auto-replied. She emerged into alley daylight and a smell of wet cardboard. The city had the specific afternoon sheen it gets when something important is about to happen and doesn't know where yet. She stripped the gloves, stuffed them into a side pocket, removed the badge, let her hair down, and became again the person she had been that morning, plus one secret. On the sidewalk, a street musician dragged a bow across a violin with a patience that felt like good news. Elena dropped the only cash she had on her into the case because she needed something to not be a transaction. She kept walking. She didn't look back to see if anyone followed, because if someone was following, they would be good at it. At Velvet Line, the red letters had dried into a dull maroon crust. Maria had taped butcher paper over them because there are some insults you don't let older women see when they come in to buy a dress to wear to their grandson's graduation. Patricia was oiling a machine, eyes narrowed like she was daring it to squeal. Nina was making tea too strong. Yuki hadn't come back, but she had texted a sketch of a dress with pockets that made Elena want to both cry and sell 100. "It's handled," Elena said, and none of them asked what it was. They nodded like women who have survived things, and then the kettle screamed and Maria swore in Spanish, and Patricia slapped a frayed belt onto Elena's cutting table like a homework assignment from the world. At dusk, Dante stood at his window. The city spread under him like a grid of consequences. He made a call without looking at the phone. "We're moving to paper," he said. "No one touches a bone." "I'm not a paper guy," Tony said in his ear. "Then become one," Dante said, and hung up because some men don't have the right shape for the future. He poured whiskey and didn't drink it. He thought about Elena inside a room where men like him make other men small. He thought about her hands holding a strange badge and a bottle of cleaner and a phone with a camera and a promise to a girl on a beach. He tried to imagine what word he could say that wasn't a weapon. He didn't find one. Night thickened. The city felt like a drum with a palm hovering over it. Somewhere, a copier ran until its cartridge died. Somewhere, a line prosecutor dug into a folder with the specific greed of someone who had never had a story this clean. Somewhere, a server farm kept a copy of a truth that had slept in a safe. Elena stayed late. She basted a sleeve. She unpicked a seam that had puckered because the fabric wanted to be what it wanted to be. She wrote 3 invoices by hand because the printer had eaten paper with a hissy fit. She took a photo of Maria in the new reading glasses and texted it to a number she had turned into a ritual. The message didn't deliver anywhere important yet. It delivered to the space she kept in herself for hope. She locked the door at 11. Brooklyn smelled like bread and exhaust and cold. The sky had that very particular black you only get when it's about to decide to rain or not. She walked home and didn't sprint when she heard a car behind her, because sprinting is how you lose. She checked the mirror just before her street, and it reflected only her face and a pair of headlights, too far back to matter. Back in the apartment she could afford, because she could now prove where every dollar came from, she put the kettle on, stood with her hands around the hot mug, and let the day leak out of her bones. The bag Dante had bought sat on the top shelf of the closet in its box, unopened still. It wasn't a punishment. It wasn't a keepsake. It was a reminder that wanting was allowed, and the method mattered. The phone buzzed once on the counter with a message from Marcus. Delivered, received, stand by. She put the phone face down and breathed. Across the river, Dante's building slept with both eyes open. His world had learned how to wait, and he was trying to teach himself. He closed his eyes and saw Elena's again as she turned away from a bag under glass. He opened them and watched a plane cross the black like a slow thought. In a hotel suite that smelled like success and failure, Victor poured cognac over 2 ice cubes because he was a man who liked to hear expensive things crack. He called someone whose number you got by knowing a pastor who knew a judge. He told himself there was no way in the measurable universe that anything in his safe had walked out without his permission. He told himself a story in which Dante was tired and Elena was a hobby, and the city had room for both. He fell asleep smiling at something only he could see. In a federal office with carpet no one sees on purpose, a woman with a tired ponytail flagged a file to her supervisor at 1:12 a.m. The subject line was short, the attachments long, the tone restrained. The supervisor's reply arrived at 1:19. Move. A third email at 1:23 accumulated people like a snowball. At 1:41, a name that used to mean nothing to Elena and everything to Dante appeared on a list with a time next to it. Before dawn, trucks would gas up. Bad coffee would be poured into worse cups. Badges would be checked against photos taken in better lighting. Somewhere, a printer would spit out a warrant with a typo that no one would notice. Somewhere else, a door would be breached politely, which is to say, loudly. Elena slept for 3 hours and dreamed of straight lines that refused to stay straight. She woke to an early autumn wind stumbling down the street, pushing leaves into corners like shy children. She pulled on a sweater, tied her hair in a knot, and smiled at her own face in the mirror because she looked like someone who worked. When she opened Velvet Line, the sign she had taped over the red paint had peeled at one corner. She pressed it back. Maria came in humming. Patricia came in with a Tupperware of something fragrant and brown. Nina came in with eyes that had cried and were done with it. They worked in a room where shame had been wallpapered over with craft. Dante didn't go to the office. He went to the window again because the city looks different right before it hears news. He picked up his phone and almost called Elena and didn't because he didn't know what he could say that wasn't an instruction. He put the phone down like it could feel disappointment. A siren started far away. Then another answered like a second voice in a song. The hum of the city changed by a degree. The light got thinner like the sky was holding its breath. He thought, not for the first time, that there is a moment in every story where the ending becomes inevitable, and everyone keeps speaking anyway. He hoped they were not at that moment yet. Elena threaded a bobbin. She tested the tension and nodded because it felt right. The door chimed. A woman stepped in with a dress that needed courage at the hem. Elena smiled in the way that offers it. On the street, a third siren somewhere turned left instead of right. In a suite above a park, Victor slept through his ringtone twice before answering. He listened. He sat up. He said a word that men like him don't say out loud. He walked to a painting and touched the frame as if a secret could be warm. He opened the safe. Everything looked the way it had looked. He told himself that mattered. Elena set the first stitch of the day. Dante picked up his phone and typed a message he wouldn't send. When this is over, I want to learn how to make a shelf for your shop. He deleted it because he didn't know if he was allowed to think about afters. Marcus's text arrived without ceremony. Wheels up. The first siren went past Dante's building. The second joined it. The third was a rumor unless you knew what to listen for. He closed his eyes and saw a hospital room from years ago. A girl smiling through morphine. A promise spoken into the linen. He opened them because the city was moving toward a sound he had made by stepping away from other sounds. He didn't know yet whether the sound would be a door opening or a door closing. He only knew it was coming. And somewhere between a boutique that smelled like vanilla and a workshop that smelled like oil, between a glass case and a sewing machine, a woman had decided which story she wanted to be in and had walked into it. The sirens braided themselves tighter. Elena lifted her head and listened without knowing why. The day began. The first siren started before dawn. Not loud, just enough to make the city hesitate. A thin blue line in the dark, stretching through Manhattan. By the time Dante poured his first coffee, there were 3 more, closer, sharper. He stood by the window, shirt half-buttoned, tie forgotten on the table. Down below, unmarked sedans glided through the mist like sharks that didn't need to rush. He didn't reach for his phone. He didn't call Marcus. He didn't need to. Whatever was happening was already too late to stop. At 6:12 a.m., the news ticker broke the story. Federal raids on Salus Enterprises. 3 words that felt like the universe saying your move. Dante watched the footage in silence. Agents in black windbreakers, boxes carried out. Victor's face on a split screen next to his own. Former business rival, the caption said. He almost laughed. Almost. When Marcus called, Dante answered on the second ring. They've got everything, Marcus said. Ledger, shell accounts, ports. Victor's gone. And us. Collateral. They're sweeping the network. We'll be fine if they stop at him. They never stop at him, Dante said. Prepare the house. Already done. Dante hung up, stood in the doorway of his kitchen, and waited for the next sound. He didn't have to wait long. At Velvet Line, Elena didn't hear the sirens until the second hour of work. Maria was humming, Patricia was arguing with a stubborn seam, and sunlight crawled through the high windows like it had somewhere to be. The world felt almost normal. Until the door burst open. Mrs. Vale? The suits were polite, the badges real. The words were routine. Search warrant, financial link. Ongoing investigation. They moved carefully, cataloging invoices, hard drives, bank statements. The women froze mid-stitch, the way animals do before thunder. Elena stood still while they worked. She answered every question in a voice that didn't shake. "Did you know your husband transferred funds to this business?" "No," she said. "And I can prove every cent here came from clean accounts." Her calm unnerved them more than denial would have. When they left, one agent paused at the door. "Ma'am, you might want to call him. They're moving on him next." She didn't. She didn't need to. By 9 a.m., Dante's penthouse was a war zone of silence. The agents were professionals, efficient, surgical, uninterested in drama. They moved through rooms that had been curated to look untouched by fingerprints. Dante stood at the window, hands behind his back, as if he were still the one in control. "You know why we're here," the lead agent said. "I do. You can make this easy." "I already have." He held out a folder, bank records, signed transfers, everything Elena had refused to let him touch. "That's all clean," he said. "You won't find what you're looking for there. We'll find what we find." "I'm sure you will." When they read him his rights, he didn't resist. When they cuffed him, he adjusted his cuffs so they didn't wrinkle his shirt. When they led him out past the cameras, he kept his eyes open and his chin level. The world watched and whispered the one word it always saves for men like him. Finally, Elena saw it on TV before anyone called. The footage was cold, impersonal, distant. The kind of lens that flattens human beings into archetypes. Crime boss, billionaire, fall from grace. They looped the clip for hours. They cut to archive footage of him at charity galas. Of her beside him, smiling the way wives are trained to smile. They speculated. They invented timelines. They said sources claim and allegedly until language itself became hollow. At 4 p.m., she turned the TV off. The room was suddenly too quiet. She stood there, hands clasped so tight the knuckles whitened. Then she did something she hadn't done in a long time. She closed her eyes and whispered his name, not as an accusation, but as a memory. Prison stripped Dante of the only currency he'd ever trusted. Control, no suits, no skyline, no silence. He learned to measure time by meal trays and lockdown announcements. He learned that reputation fades faster than hunger. He learned that power only means something when people are free to fear it. Here, no one cared who he was. For the first 6 months, he didn't speak much. He read. He fixed things. Broken chairs, loose hinges, busted radios. He earned cigarettes he didn't smoke. He gave them away. The guards called him Vale, like it was a job title that had expired. One evening, an old inmate with a carpenter's hands watched him repair a broken stool. "You know," the man said, "if you can make something stay upright in here, you'll make it anywhere." Dante didn't smile. "Depends what it costs." He worked in the wood shop after that. He liked the noise, the saws, the sanders, the rhythm of things being reshaped. It was the first time in years he'd made something that didn't bleed. Elena wrote her first letter on the night of his sentencing. It wasn't forgiveness, it wasn't love, it was a map of her days. "I kept the shop open, the women stayed. We changed the sign, but the name is still there underneath. Velvet Line. It's still ours, even if they think it's just mine." She didn't expect an answer. She didn't get one. The second letter was longer. The papers stopped camping outside. "I hired a lawyer to clear the accounts. I'm tired, but I'm still standing. I hope you are too." She sealed it without rereading. By the third, she had stopped writing about the shop and started writing about things that didn't matter. The weather, the sound of the sewing machines. A recipe she had ruined twice. The kind of things you tell someone when you want them to feel normal. The letters went out monthly. The replies never came. In the third year, Dante received his first envelope. It wasn't hers. It was from Marcus. "You're a ghost. Victor's empire collapsed. Yours dissolved. Elena's still breathing. Don't make me regret helping you vanish." He burned it after reading, not out of anger, out of necessity. He didn't want to owe anyone gratitude anymore. He did get her letters, though, every one of them. He didn't answer because he didn't know what she needed from him, words or silence. Silence was safer. Words could wound across distance. Instead, he folded each letter and placed it inside a shoebox he'd built from scrap wood. 12 years would fill it twice over. Time is cruel in how gently it moves when you've lost everything. Year 5, Dante started teaching another inmate how to read. The man was 27 and embarrassed by every word he didn't know. Year 6. Dante stopped counting how many guards rotated through. Year 7. He was transferred to a lower security wing. Good behavior. Year 8. He was allowed to work in the library. He liked shelving books. Order, dust, silence. His old religion, reborn without profit. Some nights, he'd unfold Elena's first letter. The ink faded at the edges and traced the indentation of her handwriting with his thumb. He memorized the way she crossed her T's. He built her voice in his head from those lines. He wondered if she still drank her coffee black. He wondered if she still hated thunderstorms. Elena kept the business alive the way people keep plants alive when the light is wrong, by moving it constantly, by refusing to give up. She expanded cautiously, small storefront, modest rent, loyal staff. She trained younger women who didn't yet believe they were worth more than survival. She taught them that value didn't need permission. Every year, she wrote one sentence in her planner on the same day. He's still alive, so am I. By the 10th year, she stopped waiting for the mail truck. She still wrote, but it became more ritual than hope. In one letter, she wrote, "If you ever come back, don't say sorry. Just come in and ask for coffee." Dante was released in his 11th year, 8 months early for exemplary conduct. He stepped outside the gates with a paper bag of belongings and a sky that looked too large. The guard at the exit said, "Good luck, Mr. Vale," like he didn't mean it. And Dante appreciated the honesty. The world had moved on. Vale Capital had been dissolved, its remnants sold to smaller wolves. His name was a footnote in financial history. He rented a room above a hardware store under a false name. The owner paid him cash to fix broken shelves and creaky doors. He worked quietly. He slept lightly. He didn't call anyone. For weeks, he walked past the old Velvet Line address without stopping. The building had been repainted. The sign above the window now read Velvet Line, Tailoring and Care. Inside, he could see movement. Shapes bent over tables, fabric hanging from racks. The kind of ordinary beauty that doesn't need witnesses. He watched from across the street until one morning a gust of wind shook a paper loose from the door. He crossed before he could think. The bell above the door chimed. She looked up. Elena was older, softer around the eyes, sharper around the voice. The years hadn't dulled her. They'd focused her. She froze when she saw him. Then she smiled, not wide, not cinematic, just real. "You found it," she said. "I built the map," he replied. She set down her scissors and came around the counter. They stopped within reach but not touch. He had dreamed this moment 1,000 ways, and all of them were wrong. She broke the distance first. He smelled like sawdust and rain. She smelled like thread and coffee. When she stepped back, there was nothing dramatic, just two people who had finally stopped running in opposite directions. "Coffee?" she asked. "I was hoping you'd say that." She poured 2 cups. He held his awkwardly, like it might break. They talked about safe things, the weather, the neighborhood, how the train still never ran on time. He told her about the wood shop. She told him about the apprentices. She didn't ask about prison. He didn't offer it. After a while, he reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. A paper crane, creased, worn. "An old man taught me how to fold these," he said. "Said they keep your hands honest." She took it carefully. "I'll keep it here," she said, setting it beside the register. He looked around the shop. "You fixed it," he said. "No," she replied. "I rebuilt it. Fixing implies it was ever whole." He nodded. "You did it without me." "I had to." "I'm glad you did." Outside, the afternoon light turned golden. A leaf fluttered in through the open door, landing between them. Elena picked it up, turning it in her fingers. "It's autumn again," she said. "Always is." He smiled, not the old sharp smile, but something smaller, safer. "Seems like the world keeps giving us second drafts." She laughed quietly. "Then let's write better this time." He reached out, fingers brushing her wrist. "I'll start with a shelf. You still need one by the window." "I do," she said. "Make it sturdy. I don't plan to move again." He built it that week, sanded the edges smooth, measured twice before cutting once. When he was done, she ran her hand along the grain and said, "Perfect." He looked at her and thought of all the things he could say. Apologies, explanations, promises, but none of them were necessary. They lived quietly after that, not as the man who ruled, not as the woman who rebuilt, just as two people who had learned the cost of both. They worked, they ate together sometimes. They laughed more than they expected. They never said love out loud, but it was in the way he filled her kettle before he left, in the way she turned on the porch light, even when she knew he wasn't coming that night. Sometimes, when he closed the shop, he'd look at the sky above Brooklyn and think about the day she walked into that boutique and didn't get the bag. He'd think about how humiliation had built an empire, how destruction had built peace, how everything that hurt had somehow led here. On the first anniversary of his release, he arrived early, sweeping the sidewalk before she opened. The air smelled of cinnamon from a nearby cafe. Leaves fell slow. When she unlocked the door, he was sitting on the stoop with 2 coffees and the same quiet smile. "I never wrote back," he said. "I noticed. Would it have made a difference?" "Probably not," she said, smiling faintly. "But it's nice to hear your voice now." He handed her the coffee. "Then let's make that the habit." Inside, the machine hummed. Fabric waited. The city outside kept moving, uncaring, unchanged. And somewhere between the first stitch and the next, they started again, slower, quieter, real. That evening, as they closed the shop, the wind lifted another leaf through the doorway. Elena caught it midair, looked at him, and said, "You know, you never asked if I still have that bag." He smiled. "Do you?" She nodded toward the back shelf. The caramel leather still gleamed faintly under dust. "I never opened it," she said. "I didn't need to." Dante looked at it for a long moment. "You should keep it that way." "I plan to," she said. "Some things are better as reminders than possessions." He turned off the lights. The street outside glowed with the soft yellow of autumn. For once, he didn't think about consequences, or redemption, or balance sheets. He thought about coffee cooling too fast, about her laughter mixing with the wind, about a world that finally felt earned. Outside, the leaves kept falling, covering the sidewalk in gold. Inside, 2 people breathed in sync, and for the first time in years, silence felt like peace.